So before we continue with today's session, let's revisit the work we did previously. And what we're going to do to begin with is simply look at this image, and we can see that we've got Kate who's looking at an analog clock, one of those clocks that's a circle with the hands that tell us the minutes and hours, sometimes a third hand that could tell us the seconds, and she's saying, I think the clock is showing 5 minutes to 2. Now your job is to explain what Kate's mistake is, and in order to do this, I want you to think about what she's done and why you think she's done it, and then tell me what the actual answer should be. So once again, just before we pause the video, Kate is saying, I think the clock is showing 5 minutes to 2, and your answer is going to be what Kate's mistake is. So pause the video and come and join me when you're ready. So let's see what Kate's done. Now we can see, looking at the minutes, we have it at the number 11. Remember, each number, the minute hand chain moves around, is worth 5 minutes. So we've got 11 lots of 5 to give us 55. We know from previously that if we're looking at that, we can say that's 55 minutes past the hour. And if we wanted to work out what it's to, we go the other way. And in this case, we start at 12 and we go anti-clockwise to the left, and we count again, and we can see that to get from 12 we jump to the next number, which is 11. That's worth 5 minutes, so we're 5 to an hour. So 55 minutes past the hour, or 5 minutes to an hour. Now this brings us to looking at the hour hand. We can see that the hour hand is between 2 and 3, but it's closer to 3, so it's not quite 3 o'clock yet, but it's almost 3 o'clock. So when we're looking at this, we can see that what Kate has made the mistake of is she's using this idea of it's 2 hours, it's 2 o'clock, with some minutes past, and she's thinking about that's 55 minutes past, means 5 to, but she's neglecting to change her hour. So this time shows us 2 hours and 55 minutes, 55 minutes past 2, but if we're using that 5 minutes to, it's 5 minutes to the next hour, which is 3 o'clock. So in this case, she's got confused on that, so she's thinking that it's 5 minutes to an hour, and it's 2 something, so it must be 5 minutes to. 5 minutes to 2. But the actual answer is, it's 5 minutes to an hour, and it's to our next hour, which is 3. So it should be 5 minutes to 3. Now in today's session, it's our second time of looking how do I tell the time to the minute. And we're going to continue with our journey of reading times using both analog, the circular clock faces with hands to show us the minutes and hours and sometimes the seconds, and the digital clocks, those ones which just give us the numbers. We're going to recap on our learning about measuring time and about how we used those two phrases, AM and PM, in order to describe them. So that AM meaning morning, and that PM, which means afternoon or evening. And it'd be interesting to see as we go through this whether anyone can remember the actual words that those letters represent. So AM, what does it mean? And PM, what does it mean? Just think back to our last session to see whether you can identify those. Now turning to our textbooks, you can see our problem relates to the clocks within this bedroom. We've got an analog clock and a digital clock. And our first question is asking, how can I show the time on that analog clock? So we can see the time clearly on the digital, but what would that time look like if it was on the analog clock? So thinking about how many minutes there are in an hour, and whether that time that's going to be shown is going to be closer to 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Then we're moving on to question 1b, where we're asking, is this the morning or the evening? And you're going to be thinking about the information given to you in this image to make that decision of whether it's morning or afternoon or evening. What information can we use for those? So before we pause the video, let's just go back through those questions. Question 1a, how can I show this time on an analog clock? And question 1b, is this the morning or the evening, and how do you know? So pause the video, give those a go, and come and join me so we can look at the methods and strategies you used. So let's begin by looking at question 1a. Question 1a was asking us, what time should the clock on the wall show? And the first thing we needed to do was work out what the time was using the digital representation. And this will allow us then to start showing that digital time on our analog clock. Now that first number shows us the hour, so we know that it's 8 hours, And the second number shows us the number of minutes past that hours. And in this, there's always going to be 2 digits on a digital clock. And in this case, we can see that it's 54 minutes past that hour. So with our red hand, you can see that I've drawn 54 minutes approximately on my clock. And we can see that that's a few minutes towards the next hour. So if we change it round, we've got 54 minutes past the hour, which can become 6 minutes to the hour. So if we're thinking about that, 8:54 is 54 minutes past 8, but it's also 6 minutes to 9, which means my hour hand is going to be pointing very close to 9. Not quite 9, but very close to 9. So 8:54 would look like roughly this on the clock, because we'd be reading as 6 minutes to 9. Now for question 1b, we were asking the question, is it the morning or the evening, and how do we know? Now we've already looked at what these numbers on the digital clock represents. Now the very first number, which could be a 1 or a 2-digit number, represents the hours. Then we have our colon, and then we have 2 more numbers. There'll always be a double-digit number, and these represent our minutes. However, then we've got these 2 letters straight after them, in this case AM. And this goes back to our learning from yesterday's session, the previous session. And if you remember, AM represents or stands for ante-meridian, and PM is post-meridian. And these 2 letters that we see represent different halves to the day. So AM, ante-meridian, goes from midnight all the way till midday. So it goes all the way through the morning. And then we have PM, which goes from midday all the way till midnight. So this represents the idea of the afternoon and evening. So in this case, we've got 8:54, and it's AM, which is ante-meridian, which means this is going to be in the morning. This is going to be between midnight and 12 o'clock noon. So in this case, it will be the morning. Now the rest of your activities are going to be looking at this mixture of digital clocks, the numbers, and analog clocks, that round clock face with the hands, and identifying the different times and matching them up. So now I'd like you to complete your work in your textbook before you move on to the independent work from your workbook. And like I say, these will be all about the idea of an analog clock, a digital clock, and be looking at the idea of ante-meridian, the morning, and post-meridian, the afternoon and evening times. So good luck with the rest of your work.